Hello, I'm so glad you've chosen to tune in for this week's message from the Gospel of Mark. Today we're going to be in Mark chapter 14. Last week we looked at a contrast between a woman who served Jesus and a man named Judas who began to betray Jesus. Today, as we look at Mark 14:17 through 21, I want to consider how Jesus treated Judas. In the verses preceding our passage, we see Jesus sent the disciples to reserve a room for them to eat the Passover together. The Passover is a meal the Jewish people eat each year to remember God leading them out of Egypt after the 10 plagues that he performed against the Egyptians who had enslaved God's people. The term Passover specifically refers to how God passed over the houses of those who had spread the blood of the lamb on their doorposts as he performed that final plague on Egypt, the death of the firstborn. This was a special meal, and Jesus was about to share it with his disciples, including Judas. Let's read Mark 14:17 through 21. And when it was evening, he came with the 12, and as they were reclining at table and eating, Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." They began to be sorrowful and to say to him one after another, "Is it I?" He said to them, "It is one of the 12, one who is dipping bread into the dish with me. For the Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born." While Jesus did point out that he knew someone was going to betray him, he did not specifically call Judas out in front of the other disciples for them to attack Judas or shame him. He did not name names, but rather simply pointed out that he knew it was going to happen, both to let Judas know that he was on to him, and so the disciples later could know that Jesus knew it all along. But he did not do so in a way for the disciples to know in that moment who it was. We also find out from the other Gospels that Jesus lets on specifically to Judas in a bit of a coded message that he knows it is him by saying, "What you do, do quickly." Basically means just go do whatever you have planned to do. Jesus doesn't try to stop him from his betrayal, though he could have. He just gives him over to his poor choice, even though it saddened him deeply to see this friend betray him and condemn his own soul. He does not attack Judas, but rather shows gentleness and kindness to Judas despite knowing that he is about to betray him. Furthermore, John's gospel tells us that Jesus washed the disciples' feet, including Judas's feet. Jesus doesn't just pass over Judas because he knows what he is about to do. He serves Judas in the same way he served all his faithful disciples. Jesus leaves us an example of how we are to treat our enemies. In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." And Jesus demonstrated loving enemies in how he treated Judas, not only refusing to pay evil for evil, but also showing kindness and serving Judas in the moments leading up to his sudden yet inevitable betrayal. Paul would later reinforce this idea of how we should treat our enemies in Romans 12. In verse 14, he says, "Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them." And then he goes on to say in verses 17 through 21, "Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.' To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by so doing, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." As disciples of Jesus, we must follow Jesus' example of love for our enemies. Like Jesus, we must not only never repay evil for evil to those who hurt us, but also do good to those who hurt us. Show them kindness in spite of how they treat us. Pray for them. Help them in their time of need. Show them the love of Jesus. Do not allow the sinful actions of others overcome us and cause us to become hateful and do bad things, or even avoid doing good and showing the love of Christ to them. Instead, strive to overcome evil through doing good and treating even our enemies with kindness and good deeds. Who is the Judas in your life that you might just need to change your attitude towards and the way you treat that person? Consider how you can be more like Jesus in the way you interact with that person, or maybe even multiple people in your life. How can you seek to overcome evil with good in those situations? This is perhaps one of the Bible's toughest teachings and one of the toughest examples of Jesus to follow, because naturally we are inclined to want to hurt those who hurt us, or at the very least give them the cold shoulder. Yet Jesus calls us to love them and to do good for them and to pray for them, and he led by example in serving Judas just like he served everyone else. Let us strive to always follow Jesus' example in how we treat everyone. Treat others who sin against us graciously. Show them love, kindness, and gentleness, which may take a lot of self-control. And perhaps even be troubled in your soul for them and wish them to be able to turn around and improve in the future. We cannot control how people treat us, but we can react in a Christ-like manner. As always, I hope you've gained something of value from today's message, and that this message encourages you to be more like Jesus when it comes to how you treat people who mistreat you, so you can perhaps overcome evil with good. Have a great week, and may God bless you as you seek to follow him.